Hello from Smithers, British Columbia. So it's May 7th and 2020. What else is going on in BC? I wasn't going to look much at the news, but I did have a quick scroll through my news headline feed, and this one caught my eye in a local BC paper, saying that in my neck of the woods here on Highway 16, which is the only highway that you can move through the north of British Columbia on, First Nations plan to block non-essential travel to and from Prince Rupert. Ministry of Transportation says they have no tenure. Interesting. A road blockade by, I can't pronounce the name and I haven't heard it before, so I don't know how to say it. The First Nations, which is of the Tsimshian tribe, I believe, which is just outside of Prince Rupert, is restricting traffic to and from Prince Rupert, Port Edward, and Terrace. And this may occur as early as this week, according to Gary Reese, the mayor of this nation. A portion of the highway proposed to be blockaded is located at Selvis on the Prince Rupert side of Cassox, roughly 60 kilometers west of Terrace. The highway there passes through a small section of the reserve land, and the province has now confirmed it has no tenure for that passage because of land claims issues. So what I don't understand is, when did this happen in our legislation laws here in BC, that in terms of pandemic protocol, is that what's going on? The First Nations are acting as a sovereign and independent nation within the borders of a country, Canada, within the province, borders of the province, British Columbia. Case in point that there's limited access and from remote location, great difficulty in accessing healthcare, and the concerns around if the virus were to spread in remote communities. Understood. If that's what you believe, I can understand why you want to take precautions and protect your people. And also in terms of all of us having access to healthcare resources, there's a necessity for us to play on a even and equal playing field then, right? If we're all going to be in this together, let's all be in this together. But we're not really all in this together if there's a two-tier minimum system happening, which is what I am seeing. And this is another example of it. I have no problem with you having traditional, territorial, cultural rights returned to you or affirmed to you, or whatever you want to phrase it as, but within limits. And when it comes to Ministry of Transportation tenure on a public highway concerning all communities that use the all residents of the province, in fact, Highway 16 runs, that's the province. And yet one small number of people claiming a hierarchy above are shutting that down for all of us. And did I get asked what no, again, not consulted. No one was. Who was? Meetings behind closed doors, things get decided. Now it's a law, a practice, a procedure, a policy, a protocol. What is it? Did we get a public announcement about it even? How do we, the people, know what the heck you, the elected officials, unelected officials, the other nation in charge of my nation? How do I interpret this? As just your average Canadian, British Columbian, wondering what the heck's going on here? Why is it okay for them to blockade, but we can't protest? How come I can't walk in a park and take a photograph of a deer, but apparently my traditional First Nation hunting rights allow me to shoot one with an AR-15 if I want to still, but I can't? What's going on with that? And this is another example of that. And on an individual first person basis, one-on-one, probably don't have a problem with most First Nations people. And I consider them to be Canadian, first and foremost, like all other Canadians in this country. So we all abide by the same rules and same laws, no matter how ridiculous. We're all in it together. We should all be doing it together. And since when did, as it says here at the end of the article, as Dr. Bonnie Hendry has said, First Nations have the ability and the authority to take measures to restrict non-essential travel into their communities as protection against the pandemic. The provincial government is communicating with all involved to make sure that any checkpoint set up on Highway 16 be calm and safe for everyone, and that the highways stay open for essential travel and emergency services. Jennifer Rice, MLA for the North Coast. All of us should do our part to help keep small communities safe by not undertaking any non-essential travel for ourselves for the time being. So if they implement this at the end of the week and then next week lift the restrictions on local residents in the Bulkley Valley, Skeena Lakes district areas, which run through all these First Nation territories that have instituted checkpoints, because this is just one article I'm talking about in terms of one First Nation band. This is happening in other First Nations that have reserves that intersect with other communities and other highways, and where people may or may not be traveling through. And they want control over who comes into the actual reserve communities. Fine, but they're blocking off access for residents and others in other communities that have nothing to do with them and their reserve system. So that's not fair, and yet it's going on. And it's okay, and the RCMP is assisting in these checkpoints being instituted. I heard of this happening at Highway 37, Kitwanga Junction on the west side outside of Smithers, and again at another checkpoint where it would be closer to Houston at the eastern side outside of Smithers also. So, I mean, there's First Nations territories all the way through British Columbia. You pretty much can't go anywhere where you're not near or crossing in or moving past one. So for the rest of us out here, how's this going to work? You lift the restrictions next week for camping and recreating or access to parks or something like that, but I can't get to it, right? I couldn't get to my friend's wedding in Terrace, just 2 hours down the highway, right there. Nope, can't go. So there's that, in addition to a bunch of other things going on that we don't know about because we're not hearing about it in the news, because, you know, I don't watch the news or anything, but every once in a while it does cross the radar, and all they're talking about is the virus. That's it. It's like other news stories just aren't getting billing, period. And people's attention spans, because they're so distracted by concerns about the virus because of the nonstop propaganda for that, and then they're isolating, so they're not communicating as much. They're not out there talking to other people, and we're not allowed to congregate in groups yet. So the people that are abiding by all these rules are insulating themselves from the other information and the other stuff that's happening in the world around them. And the people that are passing laws and legislation and policy and protocol without asking any of us, just doing it, and who the heck put, all of them in charge of decisions about our lives like this? It's not the level of authority I assign to the officials that I elected into governance, that's for sure. This is not the idea I had. And I'm sure most of you are thinking, what are you guys doing? What are you doing? If you even know what they're up to, which is why I wanted to bring this to your attention, because it is happening in other provinces, in other First Nation areas. And well, like I say, I don't have a problem for the actual communities protecting themselves and taking those measures if they deem it necessary. Fine, go ahead. But what are we returning to, the Wild West out here, where it's every town, depending on how you want to run this town, that's how it's going to get run. But the government and the enforcement arm of the government are only going to back those that they deem legit. And then how do they make the decision when they actually arrive at the checkpoint? I mean, what's the criteria on that? Are we, the public, the people out here, allowed to see that? How are you deciding whether my travel is essential or not? And who gave you that right? I want more proof that there's an actual pandemic happening, because we've sure done a lot of rearranging and all this in together at a great distance, cost, time, and harm to a lot of people. For what? What exactly have we prevented from happening? Because there's sure a lot of questions about the validity of that, let's just say. A lot of questions. And I feel like it's too easy for us to just be separated and asleep and then further divided so that we're not seeing the bigger picture of what's going on, which is, well, we're all being distracted in our various ways. The government, the powers that be at the top are taking great liberties, great steps to encroach on our rights and our freedoms and to take them away from us, and they're not going to give them back. And it happens that fast. It happens overnight. It happens on a Friday, typically. And it's been happening for a while. And every time we turn around, another step forward, another line crossed, another law passed, another, oh, the Canadian people said they wanted it. Really? Because I kind of missed getting asked about that again. And yet, y'all know where I am. You can locate me. Not a problem, but never seems to happen. That question, you know, they just do what they want because they're on an agenda and they have their plan and it's unfolding and we're just being mowed over, pulled along, rolled along with it, and whatever resistance you as an individual can put up, I would put up, of course, because what else can you do when you're of that mind? But to what effect and what end is that going to have? I don't know. I don't know. I don't even know where to begin with something like this. How do I even protest it? Right? What next with that? Outside of letting other people know that it's going on, so we're all informed, and so when you encounter it, or if you encounter it, you're better armed. Forewarned is forearmed. That's maybe where we're just at now. But yeah, restricting access, putting up checkpoints. Blockades are okay for some, but not for others. Protests are okay for some, but not for others. This law for them, but not for others. Now we're predicting one of the worst fire seasons ever for British Columbia. That's, you know, with checkpoints, restricted access, closed up communities, further divisions. Just feel like you're getting set up sometimes for things to not go well. So, on that cheerful note, I'll leave this video with y'all to ponder and check out the links below if you want to or not. Thanks. Bye from beautiful BC.